welcome to Show Studio. Thank you for spending your evening here with me, but it's a good reason to do so because we're going to be talking about Eddie Slimane's latest collection at Saint Laurent and talking a little bit about what he's been doing at the house, but also discussing Paris Fashion Week so far. I've got a fabulous set of panellists here with me to help unpick what's going on over in Paris, but before we begin, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Dean.
I'm Dean Kissick from ID.
I'm Carlo Brandelli, I'm a designer.
I'm Garnett, I'm a stylist.
I'm Tobin from Selfridges.
Carlo, you don't mince your words. What do you think about what's been going on at Saint Laurent? Do you like it?
You always start with me, Lou. Everyone knows I'm a fan. I don't think he's put a foot wrong since Dior. And particularly in the last 2 years, everything, the visuals, the imagery, the architecture of the store, he's developed a new standard. I think it's the fallback position for aspiring rock stars and real rock stars. And that's a very small demographic, but also I think it's the label of choice for anyone that aspires to anything to do with fashion or music or style and design. So I couldn't be more of a fan.
Do you agree? Are you equally as much of a fan, Dean?
Probably not as much as that, but I am a fan. I think an interesting thing is you talk about the rock stars and stuff, and I think he's really outlasted, well, he's definitely outlasted all the rock stars whose career he kind of came up with when they had that mid-noughties moment. It would be quite naff to say he listened to that sort of thing now.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because the old show, there's sort of an old Dior home show and the soundtrack is Razorlight, which you think at the time was probably like really cool, but now...
That was Razorlight in the Morning, and that song was actually written for the Dior show.
Exactly. Good knowledge.
How do you know that?
I was doing some
He's been
research.
researching.
Yeah. This was 2005. So Razorlight is maybe kind of almost could be like the most embarrassing thing. That song, it could be like the most embarrassing thing you could admit to listening to nowadays. And yet Hedy is still a big deal in the fashion world.
He survived.
Are
we saying Razorlight's not cool now?
Johnny Burrell's
what's he up to now? Does anyone know?
He was at Frieze Art Fair opening. That's the last time I saw him. But actually, he is. I forget what he's up to, but it's kind of funny. I apologise if he's anyone's friend, but if you if you Google it or YouTube,
I wasn't going to say anything.
There's a YouTube video of him, I think, doing his new music project, which surfaced a couple months ago.
Not good.
It's not my cup of tea.
Were Razorlight all dressed by Saint Laurent? By Dior?
By Dior. I don't think they were always dressed by them.
Was there a cool band that Dior did?
Libertines.
Well, they were cool.
The Libertines.
Yeah. And also, if you look at the bands that he's
Puritans.
championing now, they're so kind of unheard of that I guess they are really cool. You know, I'm not cool enough to know who any of them are. But like the soundtrack for the show that we're about to see, it's a girl, really young girl. She must be I think she's like 20, 21. She's called Clementine Creevy. Have you ever heard of her? You're cooler than I am. No? Okay. You work at ID. So he always he's like a star maker in that respect, isn't he? Kind of.
She American?
I presume so. I think so, yeah. He likes that LA scene.
There was a band that I saw at an event about 6 months ago called The Savages. Anyone heard about them yet? Yeah. And I thought, I don't know if they're going to get as far as, would I say a female Joy Division? I don't know. They have the potential. And I thought, okay, they're really great. And then I saw that he'd already photographed them about a year ago, especially the lead singer, Jenny Beth, I think it was French. So he always seems to be there. And of course, Saint Laurent, he's got access to everything. But it's impossible not to make stars when you're in that position. You're that well funded and you have that many windows and opportunities to those people. So,
hey, are you as much of a fan as Carlo is? What's your take on it?
I've got a bit of a soft spot for Eddie Slimane because a long time ago when I was doing Cheap Date in New York, he came up to me at a party and he said, I love Cheap Date. And I remember thinking, and he was the kind of golden boy, he'd just done a Dior suit, and I was like, oh, that's so nice, you know. And I remember that he was very sweet, and I always thought, God, I really like him. But I think that he's very talented, and I think he's got that thing of being exactly into bands, into zines, into subculture. He kind of tries to find the underground, and I think he probably is quite underground when it's actually feels like an underground can't even exist anymore. He seems to kind of try and access it, and I think that's kind of great.
He makes one.
Or he makes one, exactly. And he kind of, with the clothes, I think that that exactly that. It's like, you know, if you think about Yves Saint Laurent and that archive of the gypsy, the ballet rouge, you know, whatever it is, and then there was that real rock and roll bit of Yves Saint Laurent, you know, the smoking, the see-through blouse, all that. And I think what he's done is he's just gone, you know what, that's what I like, that bit there, and I'm going to harness that because I'm into that, and that's what I'm going to do. And I kind of think, great. I mean, that's your. Do you sort of, you know, he's sort of taken that bit almost as a stylist in a way. You know, the fringing jacket, and when I see his clothes in a shop, actually, it just completely makes me think of really like Anita Pallenberg, you know, and he's done that alluring rock and roll look. You know, it's so alluring. And he has done that brilliantly. You do want that fringe jacket, even though everyone else has got it. You still want it.
I had one originally.
I had one originally. But
Black.
But it wasn't my cut.
Mine was black suede. Mine was black suede. What's yours?
Brown suede, which isn't as good. But you know, so that's what I think. And then I sometimes see things and I think, actually, that's not. No.
He divides opinion, though, doesn't he?
But you know, yeah. But I think the kind of his direction is kind of ballsy. It's like, that's what I'm into, and that's my life.
And do we like that clarity of vision in a designer?
But maybe they'll be totally different tonight. I don't know. Do you like that clarity? I'm not sure.
I was just going to say I was a fan to begin with, and now that clarity might be becoming a little bit tiring. A bit like when he was at Dior Homme, you know, it's the same thing, and fashion is so fickle. It only takes one person to say one thing, and it changes your whole perception of it. Because I had a friend of mine that I used to design with say to me, I asked them what they thought of Saint Laurent. They said it looks like Miss 60, and as soon as they said that, I kind of thought, yeah, it does a bit, actually, it does. But it's that comparison. It's like what he does is so easily emulated on the high street, and when you see the pieces, sometimes I do think to myself, does it justify that price point? It's ridiculous.
But you see it in Selfridges sort of every day, and the sort of space they have there is really beautifully done. Really love, like, the merchandising is gorgeous. Is it sort of one that really draws people in? Does it look expensive on the rack, in your opinion?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. And it certainly isn't a rock star crowd that's buying it.
Yeah, I guess that's the irony.
That's the irony
Who buys
of it. It's, you know, it's like an Asian 40-something fashionista that can afford 10 grand on that sparkly jacket. You know, that's the reality of it.
But you look heartbroken.
No, I'm not. No. What I'm thinking is, it sounds really kind of small, but I've got a lot of those things from having been like a real thrifter and being into old clothes. You know, I've got, when I go to the store, and this is no bad, it's just the style, but you know, I've got a lot of what I see there.
So you think it's too much rehashings?
I don't know if I do, but I've kept those pieces. I think what he does, which is clever a lot, is he sort of does the classics, the classic rock and roll. You know, the polka dot, pussy bow black, you know, stuff that you want. So, but sometimes I'm like, wow, you're really going. This is tight. You know, it is. It is Anita Pallenberg. You know, it is rock and roll. It is just so. What he's doing is so.
You're not really surprised by it, are you? But I guess that's maybe not. It's not what he's intending to do. He wants.
Also, maybe that's sort of slightly new to some people.
Yeah.
You know, if you're kind of not culturally, but if you've been into the Rolling Stones and you've been into music from the 60s and the 70s, then that style you're completely familiar with. So, and it doesn't make you like it any less. But for some people, maybe that's an introduction to this fantastic, loose, bohemian style. I don't know.
But I guess that's the interesting thing, and this leads me to kind of my next topic of discussion, which is if there is a certain sort of irony to high fashion championing or targeting subculture, because as Jack says, you know, these young, cool kids who he might be introducing this whole sort of 60s grungy aesthetic to, they're never going to be able to afford Saint Laurent. They're going to go and buy the high street takes on it. So I guess, is there a certain irony to when a house is so sort of rooted in exploring and championing subculture, to the point where it kind of feels like a gang that you're not quite part of, but then you look at it and you're like, these kids can't afford.
They will buy it though. I disagree, and they do buy it because I'm probably a similar age to Heidi. What is he, 42, 43? Does anyone know?
I'm probably.
Can we look up how old Eddie Slimane is?
Yeah,
I think he's about 41, 42.
Google it. And what the younger generation did
45.
Is
Is that
that
older or younger than you?
they save up. He's a little bit older. Is that they save up and they
Yeah.
aspire to get those great rock pieces.
It's very
Do you know
I don't
what?
know if
though?
they
to
do.
save up to those pieces,
Seriously,
like
so
it's super high price point.
Yeah, it is
You're going to
incredibly
be
expensive.
saving, if you're, 17, 18-year-old kid, you're going to be saving for 5 years to get that jacket. Like it's that.
They'll
I
buy
don't
the
agree with
jeans.
that.
The jeans, a couple of £100. Is it
Yeah,
£300?
maybe that's true.
They buy the jeans or they buy the t-shirts. They won't buy obviously the bits that are made for the business side, and you have to realise that Saint Laurent is an enormous business, and it caters to the clientele you were talking about.
But do you
earlier.
not think this is confusing? Because I agree with you that those young kids will want to buy into the brands. But I think with a normal designer brand, they would buy into the beauty. But now the beauty is YSL and the label is Saint Laurent. And that's, I guess, where I'm finding it a little bit confusing to see how he's letting those kids be a part of his world. Because if you look at Chanel, like young girls, all young girls own Chanel, but they own a lipstick or they own a perfume, and then they grow up and for their 21st, if they're spoiled, they get given the bag.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not quite the same with Saint Laurent, I don't
Do you know
think.
what's interesting as well? Some of the bags still say YSL on them.
Yeah.
And I asked why that was, because obviously the rebranding has been such a big part of it all. And it's that those bags sell so well with YSL that he wasn't allowed to get rid of those bags because they had to sell the ones with YSL. And so no matter how much he tried to make it Saint Laurent and this new, let's all be sucked into this marketing vortex, at the end of the day, those bags with YSL down the front of them are their best selling bags and support the business. So they have to keep
They
those
have to keep
bags
them.
in continuity. Yeah.
Do you know anyone that buys Saint Laurent?
No, I mean, I think, like, honestly, if you were a teenager and you saved up that much money, I'd maybe advise you to buy something else. Like, if you had, like, thousands.
Go on holiday or something.
Well, I was just thinking of, like, another label, but yeah, or go on holiday.
So talk to me,
or
because
like,
that ID, you're talking to that kind of audience, you're talking to young kids that are interested particularly in the interplay between music and fashion. What do you think they're turned on by? Is it Saint Laurent or is it cooler
No,
than
I
that?
think he's more interested in them than vice versa. He's the one going out looking for kind of cool new bands no one's ever heard of. Maybe not even that cool, because that's not the cool music anymore, but just looking for kind of underground, almost a dedication to finding unheard of things. And I think the style he's putting out on the catwalk, you don't need to buy Saint Laurent to wear that.
Yeah, I think
You can find that. I mean, it's more like a cut, it's a style of clothing, so.
I agree. He's not selling cool to people that to cool that wants to buy cool. He's selling cool to people that think they can buy cool, if that makes sense. That have the money to think they can buy into that. But the what he promotes isn't who buys that, because they'll find that in a thrift store or in another way. They're not going to.
or if they're living the life, they'll already own it as
Yeah,
basic.
exactly. And also you said about that thing of irony or exclusion. Or I don't know if you said exclusion, but that thing, which
That
is
gang thing.
that price point is exclusive, literally. If you can't £3,000 for leather jacket, that's a tiny minority of people really who can and the clothes he's designing for, they're young, but that is shut. It's about branding. It's the power, isn't it? I mean, it's the power of branding in all fashion. It is so expensive, and the part of the kind of exclusivity of it is what makes it so alluring.
And I guess
Yeah,
what's
I
more
think, sorry, but there was this thing when Karl Lagerfeld lost £90 in a year
to wear Dior Homme.
to wear Dior Homme and to get, only wore like Hedi's designs. So it's maybe not so much about, exactly like you say, it's like you're kind of a older person who wants to kind of buy into
feel
that
cool.
fantasy, like you want to lose that weight and kind of wear that clothing or something, rather than it being about the kids. I think there's two things, one of which was his first Saint Laurent show. I think it was the same season, or the same sort of season as when Celine did that collection based on the pound shop bags. So they were making clothes that had the exact same prints as £1 bags you use for packing up when you move. And he was doing clothes that looked exactly like what Jenny from Gossip Girl was wearing. So it was kind of like quite cheap looking,
Nice
high
reference.
fashion, but exactly, it can't be a mistake. I thought that's quite cool, like very
and he feels
expensive
that
clothes.
he's got the confidence to do that. His
What's
thing
the
is that
ultimate
I can
comfort?
redefine luxury.
Yeah.
And actually luxury is what you're saying it is. It's like art in a way. It's like I'm saying this is art, so is it, I mean, maybe that's a bad analogy, but his thing is that I am, who's saying what luxury is? This is what luxury is. I'm putting it out there.
And also, I may be wrong, but I think he's incredibly commercially successful at Saint Laurent.
Yeah, it sells
probably
incredibly well.
a lot more so than Stefano Pilati, was doing incredibly well, even because it's very buyable, and there's lots of people with loads of money who want to buy cool clothes, and like it's accessible. There's nothing. It's elitist in a sense, but it's wearable to anyone within a certain size. Maybe like it's not. Yeah.
But I guess it's interesting we talk about this idea of luxury and exclusivity and aspirational fashion, and I think it's interesting we talk about redefinitions of luxury, because it seems like fashion is so democratized now and luxury is so accessible in some ways. The ultimate kind of luxury now is being very, very young and very, very thin, because they're the only things you can't really buy. And I guess that's what he's championing, isn't it?
There's a quote, Lou.
No, it's true. If you think about it, anyone can buy high fashion.
Time and silence is the ultimate luxury.
Really? Would you rather be silent or very, very thin?
No, I think people... Would I rather be silent or really, really thin? Christ.
Would you rather be young or silent?
No, silence.
Silence.
Around you, so you can think clearly and make an informed decision. I just want to pull Dean up on a point earlier. You're all talking about commerce and fashion. Is it just about the clothes with what he does? Because he puts so much emphasis on, well, music and rock, now architecture too, archive, the way he works. It's that whole semiotic vision of how he translates the message of the brand. So, well, for example, let me ask this question, and people are divided, people have been cutting about the style. Could someone else have gone in there and been so successful? Someone very, very young, maybe 25, well, actually they'd never book a designer in their 20s. They'd have to have someone of weight that can carry through a creative vision. He is the creative director, a designer designs, but there are all these other platforms and levels which you need to understand in order to create the vision of the brand. So if someone different had gone in that was possibly closer to a generation that could understand what he was doing, do you think they would have put the price down for all the clothing and made things a bit cheaper and more accessible? Or do you think they would have just gone along the exact same strategy, built the business, and just let him create and become this spokesman for young aspiring rock generation or older generation? I mean, I was surprised, you were talking about teenagers as well. I think his demographic, he feels his demographic is probably in their 20s. But the business, as Jack said earlier, is probably people that are actually buying it, in their 40s?
40 plus, yeah.
Okay, so I think there's a real division between what's being said here. And then does he care? Because people are talking about him being disrespectful to Saint Laurent, to Yves Saint Laurent himself, which I don't think he was. I think everything he's done with the brand has been incredibly respectful. If you look at the way he shot the campaigns, the photography on the website, it's very black and white, which gives you this nostalgic, romantic, old feel to even that imagery, which means I'm being respectful to the tradition. He also dropped the name Yves straight away. He just went to Saint Laurent. So he's saying, okay, we're not doing the man, we have to be somewhere else. He
also, I think
that was
a reference to Saint Laurent Rue Gauche, which was the ready-to-wear line.
I think it's deeper than that. There's my gallerist, Robert, in Paris, at RCM, wrote a book on Saint Laurent houses.
So did mine. Continue.
The houses of Saint Laurent. And he worked with Saint Laurent's partner, Berger, for a long time. He got to know him quite well. So they discussed these things a lot with him. And I've had these discussions with Robert about what they thought it was, what they think it is. Well, it's interesting because the label, when you've got your own name on your brand, which is why I've never done one, it becomes so specific about what you can and can't do. And then if somebody then carries the weight of your name, they come in like Hades come in and said, right, okay, it's Saint Laurent, we're going to now do this. It must be incredibly difficult for him to even acknowledge the greatness of that man and what he did over 50, 60 years. You either have to ignore everything or be partially respectful, which means you can't always take, let's call it the correct path, for want of a better word. You know, because obviously we'd like to see it, well, I don't know, do people want to see it even more edgy than it is? I agree, I think they have become.
But I agree with what Carlo's saying in terms of branding and marketing. I think he's an absolute genius. I think dropping the Yves and it becoming Saint Laurent and his whole vision of the brand, everything from how the concessions look to the store looks to the branding, the advertisements, the photography, fantastic. But in terms of the clothes and the pieces, if you're looking at a brand and a designer like that, it's not up on my radar in terms of...
Does that matter in modern fashion anymore?
Well, it depends if you're sucked into the vortex of branding and marketing, which
Look
I think
at Kenzo, like
many people that are shopping in Saint Laurent probably are, and it is incredibly commercially successful. You can't take that away from it. But I think my eye is much more drawn towards, you know, the likes of what Phoebe's doing at Celine, or, you know, in terms of pieces, and you can look at them meticulously and you can understand the price point, you can look at the finishing. You know, to have, he exhibits, he has glass boxes in some of his stores and in his concessions where he'll have a very, very high price point piece. So he'll have like a £15,000 a sequin jacket that really could, you look at it and you really think, is that really £15,000, or is this just marketing hype over anything else? And it's displayed behind glass. You know, someone has to request to get it out. So I look at it as branding, excellence, genius. Clothing, maybe not so much, you know.
But going back to sort of what I said, you know, in terms of like, isn't that modern fashion? Do we not think that's so much of a part of so many brand success? It's all hype, but no real substance.
She's looking at you, Dean. What's the demographic of ID at the moment? Who's the reader? Age-wise?
Just very, very cool teenagers, like.
So teenage.
Yeah, trendsetters. No, it's probably kind of similar to Saint Laurent, I'd imagine. Maybe
what,
a bit,
40
maybe a bit younger, 30. I don't know. I don't want to say any.
Yeah, you don't have to say.
I have no idea. Just everyone.
But do you think they care more about brands than clothes? So they don't care if a t-shirt or a dress is like cool and beautifully done and amazing. They care more about if the brand is like interesting and exciting.
Is this? We're not talking about ID audience.
I guess
we're just talking about anyone.
Yeah, everyone. But I guess like a little bit in your experience at ID.
Well, Saint Laurent's not really branded, is it? I don't know. I mean, it's more of a style, isn't it? They don't have. I don't know. I don't think the clothes have logos or any. Like, it's not.
Go on.
They don't have. He wouldn't have logos. He'd have
No.
few.
But
Well, he wouldn't have as
brand,
much of the sort
I
of
guess.
obvious print or recognizable stuff, except for a few standout pieces like that Blue Star cardigan or something that maybe you would recognize across the street. I don't think people are that obsessed with brands. Maybe not like it was when I was growing up. I don't think the things are as separate as maybe they were once, where it was just about a logo. I mean, what does it say? If you like Prada or you like Givenchy, maybe you're liking a certain type of design, a certain type of print or cut. I mean, is that the brand or is that the clothes?
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's one thing about Saint Laurent though, and the kind of marketing and stuff, it's sort of quite sort of provocative in a way of like when I said I was doing this panel, pretty much everyone said, oh, are you going to slag it off? Or I hope you slag it off, or like please slag it off. You know, no one's saying, God, I love Saint Laurent.
It's divisive, isn't it?
Yeah, he attracts a hell of a lot of and in my limited experience of doing these panels, obviously I've never done like Walter van Beirendonck or Fashionista or anything like that. I mean, these are different things, and anyone's ever said, oh, I hope you have a go at it. They've wound a hell of a lot of people up.
Why is that? Do you think that's just the fashion industry being precious though? Because I think everyone likes to be given a
Yeah,
good seat.
yeah, partly because they've kind of.
And they don't do that.
They're very. Yeah, I mean, Saint Laurent PRs are like hardcore, you know, and like they were very. They're very tough on the press. A lot of it's just the press throwing their toys out the pram because, oh, I wasn't on the front row and Swim Deep were on the front row and that sort of thing. Or you will get an email saying, it's called Saint Laurent Paris, the brand has to be credited as such, or you need to say Saint Laurent by Hedi Slimane, even though their Twitter is YSL, and it's all very complicated and confusing, and you get told off a lot, and yeah, people have overreacted. You know, like when he refused Kanye access to his first show at Saint Laurent unless Kanye gave him an exclusive and didn't go to any other fashion shows. So it feels like years later Kanye's still so upset by this and goes on about it all the time. He said he got Daft Punk, who did the music for that show, and recorded 2 songs with them about Hedi Slimane not letting him into the fashion show, and then went and premiered them at the Met Ball as some grand Machiavellian fashion revenge at being parred off by Hedi Slimane.
But does fashion need more exclusivity like that? You know, sometimes I question if refusing people entry, putting making everyone feel kind of uncomfortable or...
Well, I'd love to go to his party tonight. Have you ever been to Saint Laurent after party or one of his Dior Homme after parties? So I've heard they're very good.
Let's face it, we all want to be there.
Do we though?
That's what he creates, isn't it? It's that kind of, the exclusion creates the desire to be a part of it.
But I think there's always something a bit... Like, I really love the last men's shows. I haven't been to a women's show, I've only been to men's shows. I love the last one. But there's an element of a kind of flatness when you're there, I think.
Before or after? Or during?
Because there's so much hype around it. And there shouldn't be... I don't actually mean that. Even though it sounds like a criticism of Eddie Slimane, I don't actually mean it as that. I just mean there's so much talk and noise around the brand. There's all of this controversy, like he's disrespectful, he's not, he is. And you get there and you kind of see the clothes, and maybe it goes back to your point, Jack, that it's amazing in branding, but the clothes themselves aren't great. And the show finishes and you're like, there just needs to be something more, I think, to live up to the amount of conversation around it.
You need to go to the after party.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing.
I've been to events that he's hosted, and they are entertaining based on the people that go to them, like all of these things. I mean, I don't want to harp on about my age, but when the youth cults were emerging and all those scenes were developing, it was kind of interesting because the media played absolutely no part at all, and actually a lot of people detested anything to do with media or magazines because they weren't part of who formed popular culture. It was the actual bands and the people that were part of the scenes that were forming popular culture, and then the media reported on those things. The guy that does, I think he's still doing them now, is Thierry Dreyfus Eyesight, still doing the show production. He's certainly doing the lighting.
I think
is it
so,
on the credit?
yeah.
Is it Thierry?
Can you look up show production if it's Thierry?
Just see. This guy Thierry Dreyfus, who I've worked with on shows before, did a lot of the shows with Heidi at Dior, and I'm sure he's still doing them now. And he said something very interesting because we were working on the show that I was doing, and I was looking at music that already existed to act as a backdrop for the clothing at the time. And in the end, I didn't. I got massive attack to do something especially for the show, but we were looking back to try to find something that suited what was going on. And Thierry said, Heidi always wants to look to the future for the actual show, for the music. So I remember one time there was a classical musician composed a piece, I think it was on the piano, violin, I can't remember, but they put an electronic beat to. And that was the way that he interpreted, or maybe he was commenting on the juxtaposition between traditional and contemporary, to put the two together. Because if you look at his photography, he shoots in a way, and maybe Nick can comment better than I can, he shoots in a very nostalgic rock way, and the way he shoots those things. Is that a classic style, or do we say that he's being particularly period?
I think there's definitely nostalgia to his work, though, definitely. Do we not all
Or
think
is it super contemporary?
Nostalgic.
Yeah, exactly.
Certainly.
Yeah. Or is it super contemporary? Because I don't know.
It's quite interesting anyway because he's sort of, in a way, it's funny because his clothes are nostalgic.
Only because you know,
rock and
babe.
roll.
Because you can go through all those, you can go from everybody. You can go through everybody from Pete Murphy through to
wouldn't
Velvet
anyone
Underground.
know? I mean, no, that isn't sort of.
Not
that
everyone
isn't
would know.
specialist knowledge.
It is. You're just taking it for
No,
granted.
No, it's
if I
not.
showed that to girls that I know, like my friends that don't work in fashion, they would look at that and go, 60s.
Yeah,
or
60s.
70s. Yeah, it wouldn't be as
They could do
specific
the
as we would
period,
do.
but they can't do the specific icon. And that is where the designer's or creative director's skill goes to another level, because he can introduce all this subtle imagery or little messages for you where he will please the business machine, he will please the enthusiasts, and he will please the media too. It's actually very, very difficult. So when asked the question, if it wasn't Heidi Slimane that got in to do Yves Saint Laurent, who could now go in of the new generation? Maybe it's, I don't know, look at the British, is there an English designer that could take that mantle now that's in their late 20s to early 30s?
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about it like this. There are very few, we've talked about this on a lot of panels, given the revival of a lot of heritage houses, of the way in which designers are treated when they work at a house that is obviously not their own name, and how the sort of the tradition at the moment seems to be, the house is always bigger than the designer, whereas Saint Laurent seems to be one of the only examples where Eddie is Saint Laurent. And I guess you're correct, that does make it easier for another designer.
I have to disagree there, not to the general public, not to the consumer, because there's many people that buy into this brand now that don't even know, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but trust me, they don't even know that it was called Yves Saint Laurent before. They come in, They see the boutique, they see it called Saint Laurent, they see product, they buy. I can tell you, hand on my heart, they don't even know. If you said to them Eddie Slimane, they'd be like, who? It's only us. We have to remember that we're part of the industry. We're part of, we think of it like that, but the consumer really doesn't.
But then doesn't that kind of knowledge, that hype, that quite exclusive hype, let's say knowledge you're talking about, that surely filters down. Surely some essence of that that has to, in order for them to find that stuff desirable, it's so to do with branding when it's that expensive that something has to be filtering down.
But I think part of
I think it does. I think it does in the aesthetic of the brand, in everything down to the shop fit, the design, everything about it. I think it does filter down. But I think into the consumer that comes in with the money and will spend and buy, that they don't know Eddie Slimane. They don't know. I mean, the number of people that think it's called Saint Laurent now and they have no reference to what it was before, I can tell you it's astonishing.
But do you not think it's hyped by how much it's copied? Do you not think they like it so much because if they're looking in Topshop or Zara, everything that they're seeing is of that aesthetic because it's so heavily copied. So you don't think that's kind of what makes them like it? You know, if you see something enough, you start to kind of acclimatise to it and like it. And I wonder if that's been part of its success and why it's sold so well.
They're completely wearable clothes as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they are completely.
And it's what everyone is wearing. You know, it's the trend.
It's a shirt and a top, or it's a jacket. There's nothing intellectual. I mean, whatever intellectual fashion means, but there's nothing. No, but do you know what I mean?
What does it mean?
I don't know. I mean, to me, it's abstract. What I mean is clothes that are sort of there more as an experimental, where they're kind of more abstract. I mean, I'm not interested in intellectual fashion. I don't really get. But what I'm saying is that they're here and now. They've fallen off your hanger in your wardrobe. You know, they're clothes that everyone sort of has. Exactly that. I think that's really true. I think they're.
I agree with Bay. I think they're very wearable, straight up. Like they have hanger appeal. There's nothing asymmetric you ever see from him.
That's what I mean by intellectual clothes, like
asymmetric.
Yeah, I mean we think of that, you know, like conceptual designer, it's asymmetric, but it's actually true. It's like if you look at Saint Laurent, there isn't anything like that. It is very wearable pieces when you see them individually hanging there. Very desirable. They hit a lot of commercial markers for consumers. That's why it's doing so well, and that's why he has been the perfect person to go there, really, because he's turned the brand around. And I loved what Stefano did there, but it didn't make the brand perform.
He was so good, wasn't he?
I was a big Stefano fan. I loved the aesthetic. I loved what he was doing, but it wasn't performing. They got Hedi in and it started really performing. The rebranding's really worked. The pieces really sell. So it was, you know.
Is there a certain irony to the way he presents himself? As kind of goes back to what we were talking about right at the start, as this kind of champion of the cool and the kind of the underground and the left out and the misunderstood and this kind of king of subculture, but he's doing stuff that is so mainstream and so
and also so mainstream, and also for extremely, the clothes are very much for thin, kind of beautiful. They're
apparently not according to Selfridges customers.
Really? No, I mean.
Well, no, because I said they're 40 plus. That doesn't mean they're not thin. You know.
No, what I mean is, but then he's a designer, so that's kind of, come on, let's go with the world we're talking about. But I think that it's he isn't. He's kind of if you look at it from a branding point of view, what is it? 2 years. It's amazing. One man, the power of a branding exercise. It is extraordinary because you think of Saint Laurent, you know exactly what it is now, don't you? I mean,
well, apparently not a lot of people.
Okay, no, but
because they don't even know it was Yves Saint Laurent. I found that comment quite shocking. I think that.
Are you surprised?
I'm surprised.
I'm not surprised. I think it's absolutely correct for where we are in 2014, where culture is heading, because people haven't. Well, this is probably not correct to say this towards people buying branded clothing, but they haven't earned the knowledge for themselves to have the satisfaction to buy a design.
But are they clothes that demand knowledge? If you're buying a great leather jacket, you should go and research
I think creative people don't think about business very often. That's why creative people are creative people. When you get to a certain level, then obviously the business, there is pressure to produce revenue and money so you can carry on doing what you want to do. I don't think it surprises it. Did you say it did surprise you, Bae, that people didn't know what Janet said about?
When it's people, I mean, if they're 14-year-old people...
Well, no, they're not 14, aren't they? They're going to be... They're 40 plus. Are they 40 plus people that don't know?
That's all about the branding.
That's
the here and now, isn't it? You see the brand in front of your eyes. You're sucked in by it. You haven't studied fashion. You don't know anything about it other than the brand that you're you're being made to believe in.
But Saint Laurent seeps outside of the culture of fashion. Yves Saint Laurent, don't you think? He's a cultural icon as well. I'm not being, that sounds really in my gloss. I'm just surprised because he's not. There's nothing sort of esoteric. There's nothing.
Do you not think people would say YSL? I know that's very pedantic.
Yeah, well, YSL. Maybe it's YSL. I don't know.
Yeah.
If people don't know, it's neither. It's not a disaster. You know, it doesn't matter. But I'm just surprised because you know what I mean. No judgment being passed.
Don't judge me. YSL.
I'm just surprised because he was so major.
Yeah, he was.
I don't know.
Lou said something very interesting about the initials YSL, and I can't remember the graphic designer that did that logo for him. But it was an artist crossover to graphic
This is
designer.
really going to bug me now.
Please Google it.
Can you look up who does the YSL graphic?
No, it's the original drawing of
the
YSL
original.
because it was very, very specific, and that was one of the first, apart from the Chanel C's logo.
So good.
That was one of the first very
This is really bugging me. I've got the name on the tip of my tongue.
pieces of graphic design. And when you do think Yves Saint Laurent, along with two other pieces of text, which was the words Rive Gauche, that became this incredibly powerful brand. Because it wasn't just about the visual clothes, it's every time you saw a piece of text or you saw a shop front or you saw an advert or something of that nature. Then the beauty of the design of the YSL kind of took over your subculture. Then there was the clothing too. So have you found it yet, guys?
Yes, Adolphe Laurent Cassandre.
Oh, that's right. Okay, what, 1956, 58?
62.
62, I was close enough to gain points. And that was a very specific moment. There was an interesting thing about, this is a slightly fact off the radar, but I think it was the Duke of Westminster had an affair with Coco Chanel. Do you know about this?
Yeah, well, apparently, yeah.
And he was so in love with her that he emblazoned the Chanel double C logo on every single lamppost, traditional lamppost in London. So when you leave here tonight and have a look around tomorrow, you will see the gold Chanel logo. There's a camera person nodding behind me. You know about this.
True.
I read the book.
It is true. Oh, is it in the
Is
book?
It's true.
It is the book.
Every lamppost in London.
Okay.
The double C logo.
Yeah, on every traditional lamppost, down Jermyn Street or any of these places. I found out about this from the... Actually, I'm not going to say how I found it. I didn't read it from the book. But that is the power of text, logo, design, especially to do with fashion, beyond anything else, beyond the clothing. And the YSL, I think, was one of those first ones. It was so strikingly contemporary when he first did it. And there's a lot of artwork that's been based on the theory of that logo too. You know,
So you're
very
sad to see
interesting.
it removed.
But I think-
in some ways.
What, the YSL?
Yeah.
No, because it still lives.
Yeah, it still is, but not as predominantly.
But you can't take history away.
It's credit to him, really, in terms of rebranding, how it's really the fashion press and people in fashion that were so up in arms about dropping the E, because we're connecting it with the person. But the consumer just doesn't care because they just move on instantaneously with instant fashion all the time, and it's just they don't care about dropping the Eve at all. Half of them don't know who that even is.
So it's quite
They just
sensible.
see it. They just see Saint Laurent, and it was actually a very, very good move in terms of rebranding and commerciality. It was the right thing to do. It's just fashion who have the nostalgia, who think that he's doing something terribly wrong, you know, taking the man away from the brand. But really, he did the right thing from the consumer's point of view. I would say what you were saying about how he's always courting controversy. From my opinion, what I found quite funny is as many panels as I've done with you, and I've done the last 2 Saint Laurent panels, the only time I've ever got any trolling was from doing a Saint Laurent panel where I actually was complimentary about the collection, and I had people say, how can you say this is good fashion, this is awful. The only time I've ever had that happen was from Saint Laurent. I thought that was really interesting why I got...
It's like what Dean said, it gets this like fury.
I'm worried about being too nice.
We're all
about
gonna be
Saint Laurent.
trolled.
I was
Are you?
I was thinking that earlier. Yeah.
It's one of those only collectors where you feel like you have to be horrible, not you have to be nice.
But if you're nice, you get torn apart over it because people say, how could you, it's awful. That's
what, just
happened.
random people? Were they
Yeah,
like students?
random people. That's the only time it's ever
I think
happened
you
to
need
me.
to give credit to great design work across a platform and perhaps over a long period of time, because where he operates, Dior, at the upper echelon of a brand, with the attention that he gets, with everybody, with the press sitting there with their knives out every single season, it has to be incredibly focused.
But his approach is quite similar to yours in terms of how all-rounded it is. You know, for him, it's as we've all said, it's not just the clothes. It's very much like the set, it's the stores, and that's kind of how you operate.
Yeah,
at Kilburn,
well, you have to
know.
be, otherwise people don't buy into it.
But few designers are as kind of.
Well, no, they are.
rounded
But I'm
as
not
that.
saying that there aren't. There are more in whatever camp you want to put me into, or them, or Heidi, or whoever. But if you only have this veneer about your brand, and it's just about the clothing or something else, then people can feel it in every pore. It's not just one collection, and they'll find it somewhere else because they can reference everything now. Again, Dean, something you said earlier about, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but the digital. What do we call people that view things online these days? Is there an actual term?
Just people, man.
The digital viewer.
Yeah,
Wow.
The digital viewers. What?
Human.
digital natives or the
No, I saw a term
post-internet.
somewhere in Tokyo. They're calling people this abbreviated version, people that only watch things online. What is that?
Teenagers?
Google it. Yeah, no, because I remember they used to have all these kind of initials for people. They had things like DIGS.
We're
Isn't it
watched
Generation
online right
Yoho
now,
or
though.
something?
Yeah.
It's like the
Generation-
social media, internet generation.
Anyway,
Yeah, what is?
Sorry.
Oh God, I forgot my point now.
What, you think it's a brand for those kind of people that just view stuff online? You think it's not a brand?
No, just listening to what you were saying earlier about, it was kind of linked to the comment about cool, what is cool. He gets more out of the people he's building up in the public eye than they do out of him. I think it's reciprocal. I think it's 50-50 because a lot of these people are, I mean, I used to hear stories from the casters that would pick these guys up and they would be literally, they'd be students and he'd turn them into models or they go off.
But wouldn't he just give them 15 minutes?
How much do you need in this digital age? People don't even know that Yves Saint Laurent was Yves Saint Laurent.
Yeah, I agree that he's invested in a way like culture is so throwaway now, whereas he's kind of stuck to his guns.
He's trying to give some depth.
Yeah, and he clearly he's not in this culture just for like the newest. He clearly like loves that aesthetic and loves that
unapologetic about
music
it.
and
Yeah.
kind of it comes from the heart. Whereas things are so throwaway now, he's kept it, and of course he has stuff to offer people a hell of a lot. You know, his photography, his curating. He helps make musicians' careers. There's musicians we've put in ID that we never would have heard of without him. He's like the first person who brings them to us. Sometimes he'll shoot them for us. Yeah.
Does he shoot Friday?
Undoubtedly, yeah.
Yeah, he has shot Friday.
Yeah. I mean, he's done covers. I think maybe last year was the last one, but obviously it's his own terms, and it's usually he'll have found someone and become obsessed with them for a bit. I do have friends who walked his show, and
What do they say of the experience?
like you say, like you know, of people whose lives have gone very wrong after that, and people whose lives have not people like you know, people whose lives have gone right. Like it's not your responsibility, really. Like everyone who walks in your show or who you try
But
to
do you
give a
not think
hand
it is
up.
your
But I actually
responsibility to
think
pluck them
his
off the street?
casting is.
It's different if they're a model from an agency, but if you pluck someone off the street, put them in that context.
That's
isn't
all
there
he
an
did with
element?
street cast for Dior. He prided himself on it. Is that right to say that?
But I'm saying, do you not think there's a responsibility to those kids then?
We did an issue of ID. It was the only time I got to choose a theme, and I chose like street cast issue or something. And I wanted to do the whole thing, just shoot everything on street cast people. And Terry actually liked it, and Terry was like, "This is great." And he's like, "The only thing is like, just like put loads of models in anyway, because all the models were found on the street anyway." Which annoyed me, but I know what he means. Like he is right. Like they all kind of come from there. I actually think his casting is excellent, though, with some except like if you look at the last show, that was the first time
The women.
I saw.
Okay.
Obviously, that was the first time I saw Natalie Westling. I think she was Saint Laurent exclusive last season, and this season she's absolutely everywhere.
Everywhere,
And you know, now she's kind of that iconic red-haired girl from Marc Jacobs and Fendi shows and everything. And
But it's
we're
funny,
doing stuff with her. It's
the
great.
way he casts his show from a commercial angle, he casts his literally right down to his shop floor staff like that as well, plucked out of obscurity just based on what they look like, not on what experience they've got, what they've done before. He's plucked teenagers to go and work on his shop floor that were skinny enough, young enough. They're all 17, 18, and of that look. So he got rid of all of Stefano's people that were from before, and it was the cleansing, so to speak, of the brand was right from the ground up. It was right from who represented the brand on the shop floor level. It was a total change of vision from everyone. So he got people that had no experiences. I know that the HR side of the company, they literally pluck people from cafes that look the part, and they're like, have you got any retail experience? And they were like, no. And they were like, it's fine, you look great, you can fit into those skinny jeans.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Which has caused lots of problems, I can tell you. But but yeah, that's what it's all down to. It's just down to that street casting from ground roots up.
Do we not find that a bit sad?
He scares me. He scares me because I feel that he falls in love and out of love. He's one of those people that it's instantaneous, isn't it? It's like falls in love with something, out of love in a second. So it's that kind of person. I can imagine him being like that. It's very like, you're of the moment, you're not anymore. It's quite ruthless.
He's into cool.
Yeah.
And cool doesn't last.
You know, that's his sort of MO, isn't it? Mm. And all those clothes, they were the, you know, they symbolise a period that was super cool. Where they hark back to, you know, the sort of moment that rock and roll sort of burst into life. And anarchy and sex and, you know.
I'm going to say,
of cool.
I was just about to say a cliche then of a line that I always say Louise Wilson said to me about Albert. Albert said to her about cool, and he said cool is cold. And I think of that when I think of Hedy, because I think of it's the perfect kind of analogy. It's like he's so cool, but it's so cold and ruthless as well. It's so of the moment. Then all of those models that are cast for this, like next week they'll be on the scrapyard. You know, it's like because next season it'll be something else is cool. It's very, I think of the brand as being a bit like that, a little bit kind of throwaway almost, and that's why the high street can pick up on it so quickly as well, because their culture is about instantaneous fashion, so they can digest that so quickly and churn it out so quickly as well. So, but then that's why it's so commercially successful as well, because everyone can emulate it, everyone can buy into it.
Should we see what he's shown tonight? While we're just going to the images, can we get some more champagne? Thank you.
I was just going to ask that.
Oh, I just preempted. I'm such a good host.
But also, you know, why shouldn't the fashion industry be the cult of beauty or the cult of cool? I mean, if you can't get away with it as Eddie Slimane, who the hell can get away with it?
Yeah, fair point. I'm interested because Carlo, at the start you said it's like amazing design. So you must disagree kind of with what Jack's saying.
Oh, most things. But I'm shocked.
The antithesis of
I'm
the scale
shocked.
here.
I'm still shocked about the Yves Saint Laurent comment. Maybe that's a reflection on the type of client that goes there. I'm using the word amazing as a multi-layered use. So everything that he brings, all these connotations and how he understands it. And also, he does this in a very, very hot spotlight every single season, every single time. It's not easy. It's very, again, what you said, Ben, I completely agree. He does these iconic looks. It's not easy to sort of crystallize in one finite outfit a mood which could fit into the 60s and also 2014. Sorry, you're pointing.
No, I was just telling Liam to go back to the first look.
Run through, yeah. To create a standard, and what we're saying is he's creating these rock standards, the updated version of these iconic looks, is actually incredibly difficult, because the people that understand and know these looks first time around, if you get one detail wrong, it's kind of gone. That's the nature of fashion.
I don't think it is incredibly difficult.
From a stylist point of view.
But I don't think that takes away that he's done something really clever and really good. And, you know, we just saw 6 of them and he's totally done it again. You know, and he's... but I don't think that it's... I don't know how difficult.
Let's pick one.
Can we just go back to the first look for a
Let's
second?
pick one
it's
and
quite
do it.
Right, if you go to the next one.
Okay, sorry,
the
go
far
back.
right.
We're having a battle. I just want to tell you about the first
Number
one.
4.
Yeah, number 4. Yeah, like that one.
Okay,
exactly.
all right, let's talk about her.
Because that is totally... When I see that...
Well, who is she?
It's like, well, to me...
Is she Pallenberg or is she Turkel?
No, she's kind of... There's a bit of Catherine Deneuve and a bit of Pallenberg and a bit of Marianne Faithfull and a bit of... I mean, it's a total...
And is there anything contemporary as well?
It's contemporary. If you break it down, that jacket is... You know, that jacket is contemporary completely. That's the interesting. You break it.
I don't.
You break it down.
It's about
I
pieces.
don't think there's anything contemporary.
You don't think there is
about
anything?
it. I don't think it's
You
bad.
don't?
I think it looks great, but
It looks
I
amazing,
wouldn't.
but
I
it's
wouldn't say
familiar.
there's anything new.
But the way, but if you take each piece If you break it down, then I think it.
I agree with Bay because I
is
see how it's
contemporary.
supposed to look in terms of pieces, because we look at these looks, but actually it's when you see the pieces individually that they really can sell and really perform, and they look contemporary when you see them hanging there isolated on their rail.
Yeah.
But in terms of an overall look, it doesn't look contemporary, but I think the piece would if it was separate from everything else.
Just there's quite an interesting story just about the first girl. Sorry, I know we're having a battle over this.
Who is the first girl?
Well, the first girl, she is called Grace Hartzell, and she's an exclusive for Saint Laurent, and she's going to be the face of the upcoming campaign, so she's number one there. And they fitted the entire collection on her. It was all made on Grace, and she opens, and she's going to close the show as well.
She was in his video as well.
Exactly.
Which,
What's her story?
She's just a model.
Oh, she's a model.
Yeah, she's
Really?
a model.
but she
She's a real
also
model.
she has quite an extraordinary body, which people have been talking
You know, and
about.
then she
Talk
looks
to me
good.
about that. What do you mean?
She's just got a really, I don't know, she's that's what she's known for, Grace Hartzell. Since she appeared in the Saint Laurent stuff, it's hard to see all those clothes. But he shot her
Let's
less
skip some
close than
looks
that,
to see.
you know.
And then Jane Birkin's in there, obviously.
In
In
her?
the mix. Well, do you think she's quite Jane Birkin?
Definitely.
And when we were talking about look number 4, Bay,
Yeah.
Lou, did you think there was anything contemporary in look number 4?
No, I don't think it all feels. I think it's beautiful, but it's so familiar. I think
Okay.
I had that outfit when I was
All right.
And
younger.
the velvet.
So, but we don't know what the music is. We can't see the set, which adds.
The set was
more
amazing. It was all
layers.
these bronze. They looked like hurdles when you were coming in, and he loves to do a kind of a still set that moves just before the show starts.
Okay.
He does that with his men's. The lights all move back.
So that's
And for
his
this, they all
comment
raised.
on something architectural.
I think it's
and-
good.
Yeah, it's very theatrical.
Contemporary.
It's kind of like the show is beginning.
But I think it's good that we just see the clothes.
Yeah,
Actually,
exactly,
that's what
because
we're
it
talking
removes all the
about,
hype.
You know, and the middle one is totally Anita Pallenberg. Sorry. No, which is fine.
I like
love
it.
Anita. Yeah, she's one of the most stylish, you know, but it is. But they look great. And
Do you think it feels new? Do you look at this and think you haven't seen this before?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that I don't think the clothes are contemporary, but I understand that we saw a quick flash of the architectural arches coming up. And the comment that he's making there, or I feel the comment that he's making there, is about using technology, which is his contemporary way. When the lights came up, was it the light show for the menswear? Was that for the menswear show?
Yeah, he
Ross?
does that at the men's, yeah.
Yeah, I think his use of technology suggests of the moment. When he used technology, it reminds me of the McQueen
It's
show
a
that Nick did
fashion
with
house.
the robots.
And it's different with McQueen because the fashion looked new. I think that's what I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just intrigued by it that you think that that's what makes it new, and it kind of it doesn't matter that the clothes perhaps don't feel.
Well, no, I think you need both, and I think that's what's in his mind. In the same way that he tries to marry a modern spirit with the tradition of the house, he has to give you both. Because if he just gives you one or the other, well, as is happening in the panel tonight, you can't win everybody over.
but there's a look back. We'd like to go
Look
back.
9, is it the Paisley, the enlarged Paisley one?
You know, it was
This
actually
one.
no, it was the tartan miniskirt with the velvet blazer and that sweater. And I think, you know, you look at that, it's kind of, you would want those pieces. No? I mean, it is rich, but if you break it down and you take the pieces, you sort of separate it as well. They're, I don't know, that's what I think. I think, God, that velvet jacket's great. He does do, you know, it's that wardrobe thing. It's that wardrobe thing. He's very good at.
The classic rock staples.
You want
that
it
you
in your
have.
wardrobe.
That's why I really agree with Bay on this, because that's how I don't think he's showing the show like other designers do in terms of the looks, and that's why it has such commercial success, because the pieces, when you see them individually, they can combine and they can do so many more things than you can imagine.
Yeah.
You can do that.
I guess you can
do
style
so
them in
much
so many
with it.
different ways.
Yeah.
And they're things that you feel like you kind of already had, you know, they've got that lived.
But do you not think the best designer, we talked a lot about this because when we did our Prada and Marni panels, and we talked about the best fashion is stuff that you like it but you don't know why you like it. But with this you like it but you know exactly why you like it.
This isn't that, definitely
Yeah.
not. This is you like it and you know why you like it,
You know why you like
100%.
it, yeah.
And that's why, like, I don't want to come across like I'm not a fan of this, but from a fashion point of view, I'm not. But in terms of a commercial point of view, I am, because it is really successful and it does really well, and the pieces do look great on people when they put them on. You know, they're not many some designers can translate so fantastically on the catwalk, and then when you see them on people, and it doesn't have that effect. He does have that effect, you know, with his clientele that are buying into this. The pieces look fantastic, sexy, amazing. You know, it does all the right things.
But it's true, it's not like the Prada show, for example, when you saw that kind of clashing coat, you know, with the red, and then the kind of the nude massive fur with the red, and then here, and you're like, I was like, I really want that, you know, and it's totally out of the ordinary. You know, it's very different.
Unexpected, isn't it?
Unexpected.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to disagree with a few of you. I think the styling is so specific with the girls that sets the mood, and the clothing are all iconic pieces.
If I see one more biker jacket on the runway.
Yeah, you see, it is.
But what I find so frustrating is this girl that you're seeing in the show is not the girl that buys this stuff at all in any way, shape, or form.
But it is, surely. Oh, what? Yeah, but that.
This isn't the girl that rocks up into the boutique and buys these clothes. It really isn't. There's nothing wrong with that, because we all see fashion on 19-year-old models all the time, so we're all accustomed to that. But Carlo's saying he's got such a specific look, but it's like this look translates onto women of a totally different demographic.
Can we just talk about some of the dresses that are coming up, just because there's another thing that I kind of kept a little bit of a secret, which is, you know, he always works with an artist on his shows, and they do his kind of show notes, and when you arrive you get that beautiful sort of leather book, and he's worked with some amazing artists. You know, Raven Pettibone did the men's. This time he's worked with, I'm going to say this awfully, John Baldessari, who I'm aware that you will know about because you're our resident art fan.
I've met John Baldessari.
Have you? Well, he's done 10 dresses are done in collaboration with him, which are couture dresses. There's only going to be 10 of each one made. So it's quite an interesting kind of idea that he's doing couture, but in the context of ready to wear. Talk to me about John Baldessari.
When I met him, I think he was sat outside the Serpentine and he was just looking at the sky. But I had to go off from a coffee or something, so I asked if he wanted a coffee, and he was okay. And he said, like, oh yeah, I'm all right. I'm just thinking about the cosmos. So he was just staring at the sky, thinking about the cosmos. He's quite an old conceptual artist. Yeah, he looks a bit like Father Christmas. He's got a big white beard. He's old, kind of a bit pudgy. He was, I think, in the California art show that Eddie Slimane curated at Allmine Rec Gallery last year.
Do you think Eddie has good taste in art? Do you like the artists he champions and works with?
Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, they're good. I mean, in a way, you know, like that London moment, say he shot the London issue of Liberation, I think in 2005, you know, he was just shooting all the London bands. When he did his LA art show last year, those are just all the kind of LA artists. These are like, you know, those are scenes. There's not, it's not discovering unknowns, but they're good. John Baldessari is an amazing artist, highly thought of in the art world, and you wouldn't actually, you wouldn't guess that was him from looking at the dresses, because his aesthetic's very block colour and type, that sort of thing. He's a conceptual artist, a weird person to collaborate with, but they look good, right?
How many looks are there, guys? Is there a lot more?
How many altogether? 45.
Oh, yeah, just want to flip through them all, just get to the end one.
Let's go. Do we like this interplay between fashion and art when it's done like that, when it's not just kind of a print on a t-shirt? Because I know you're a keen art fan.
I'm not that keen an art fan, but fashion and art are two huge industries, you know, huge, multi-billion. They've both been overrun by commerce, more and more as the years go on. Maybe they're a bit out of kilter, and fashion's actually one of the biggest supporters of art in the world right now. So I think this year you'll see Prada, I think, are opening their Rem Koolhaas designed super museum on the outskirts of Milan later this year.
Also,
and
just because you mentioned Prada, they're sponsoring restoration of paintings as well.
they're sponsoring that. Yeah, they do huge things. I went to a show at the VS Biennale last year. They recreated a seminal show, but I think also, is it Louis Vuitton? I think Louis Vuitton are opening their huge Crystal Palace Art Museum in the Bois de Boulogne, maybe in Paris, also this year. So those are two of the biggest museums that have been opened, biggest art museums that have been opened in a decade or decades, and they're both being funded by multinational fashion conglomerate types. They're hugely interrelated.
There's lots more looks.
They both throw good parties. Yeah, there's a lot of looks, eh?
I'm not going to comment between linked to an art and fashion, Liz.
Why not?
I think it's a big subject.
It is a big subject.
I just want to say is that no one's saying like every single look's got leggings. Every look so far is black leggings.
Autumn, winter.
Aren't they tights?
Well, no, it's like it's just the same thing on every single one, isn't it? And every single look is sparkly as well. It's like
It is. I mean, it is very.
This is the last look, number 54.
Yeah, it is. It is.
repetitive.
It is rock and roll from the 60s and 70s. I mean, it really is, isn't it? So it's what he does. And we said that before at the beginning, that he's got his thing and that's what he's into. And maybe that's what you just keep.
I think he
You just keep doing
Bashing
it
it
because that's his passion. Obviously, this is what he finds.
Exciting.
He does like
Exciting,
he does like
amazing.
trousers as well. I think he does like
He does like
trousers. I think he
trousers.
Dressed Ellen DeGeneres
Yeah,
at the
she looked
Oscars
amazing.
last night,
Yeah,
and
well,
all three looks were trousers.
Really? I
But
can imagine
next
Ellen
time round
actually
it'll be
in Saint
leggings.
Laurent.
Should we have a look at the close-ups? That might give us a fresh perspective on.
I like look 12, the sort of Sherlock Holmes, Sam
I'm
Rowlinson as
surprised.
Sherlock Holmes look. It's a strong one.
I'm surprised there isn't a really sharp suit in here.
Yeah, I'm surprised we've not got smoking. Carlo, you're being very quiet. It's worrying me.
It should be, Lou. I'm just preparing my next onslaught. No, it's this season. That's why I wanted to switch to the end of the looks, just to get a proper perspective on these things. He's obviously going for a particular feel completely, and it's more period than I've seen it.
Is it?
The first few seasons were, well, after you sort of understand that he's doing every single iconic look from the 50s up to the noughties or whatever you want to call them. Once you understand that that's coming every season, or a variation of every season, you then wonder, as I did tonight, where he's going to go to next. So
But do you
obviously,
not feel like this just feels stuck in the 60s? I'm going to try
Is
and
that-
eat a cake and everyone just has to pretend it's not happening.
yeah.
and
No, I just
continue
need you to
talking.
qualify that sentence as well a bit. Lou.
That will do, if we go back a second, the gun, I think this one, the gun, I think is it embellishment or is it a print of some kind? That will do incredibly well. I just know straight away looking at these pieces, the pieces that will sell. I think the high street will try and do a version of that, but that will be the
big
top
fella.
end of it. Yeah.
His boots are amazing as well.
Yeah, the boots
Do
are
you like
really
the
good.
boots?
I love the boots. I love a good knee-high boot.
You should get some.
Oh, thank
Maybe I'll
you.
send
Maybe
you
I
some.
should.
That's
I
quite
have
No, the boots are
do you know what?
amazing.
With Saint Laurent, shoes and accessories, when I see the shoes, I want to buy every single pair of shoes.
I
They
do
are
have a Saint Laurent
incredible.
bag, and I've
Yeah.
never had a bag that gets more compliments.
I don't know
I put it on
who.
the
I don't know if
tube.
it's
Is it the
heady
little
or.
black one?
It's
With
a little
the-
black,
yes.
it's a clutch, it's leather, and it's got just discreet Saint Laurent written on it. It's fold-over clutch.
And has it got the silver chain?
No, it's
No,
literally
it's a
just a
clutch.
black leather clutch, and I've never had an accessory. Even like mad things that I wear, like big
Whoever
fur
he's
things.
got doing accessory, the shoes are phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
both across men's and women's, they're really amazing.
What's that check
There
coat?
is
What's that
something
check coat about?
The check coat.
Is that grunge?
That's rock and roll,
Yeah.
totally. But there is something kind of amazing about the fact that, to say anti-fashion, he's into style.
What do you
You
think
know-
about the fact he does his own styling?
Well, I
As a
think that's really
stylist,
interesting because it's that message that he's just going right to this edited message, which is you look at this, it's so clear what it is, there's, as I said before, there's absolutely no apology about, it's completely unapologetic in its nod, in its harking back to the 1960s rock and roll, 60s rock and roll. But if you do think about each piece, imagine taking that green khaki coat and seeing it on a rail, be great. you'd want that coat. So I think when you go into the rail, what you were saying, you go into and you see it, you do want the pieces because it's when it's presented like this, it's so referenced that you sort of just see the references. But actually, I do like.
Do you think you miss the pieces? Because I agree with you with that.
I think you do miss pieces. I think that actually a lot of the I like that idea of fashion, of it being completely accessible and just getting a jacket because you love the jacket and it just being that kind of easy in a way. And he does do that, but it's so.
You know where the references are, Bae, don't you?
It's really,
it's clear.
Exactly. We all do, but so I don't think I was very clear. What I was saying was I kind of admire his total message of this is what I'm into, and I think that if you break it up and you take it away from being Anita Pallenberg or Marianne Faithfull or Jane Birkin, then I think there are some
interesting pieces.
Actually.
Yeah. I think if we were doing a panel or a review and we had the rails in front of us and we were going through the pieces, I think it would be very different. I think there's something about his catwalk show that isn't translating like other designers do because they are so wearable, the pieces. It doesn't come across in a very kind of, we're not going to be super it's not going to be critically acclaimed like we would do for other panels or other harder to wear pieces perhaps. But
do you not think there's an irony in that we as the fashion press find it a lot easier to critique something that doesn't look wearable than we do something that actually looks like girls in the streetwear?
I do, but that's always kind of been the case, hasn't it? You'll look at something that's like we've talked before about that whole like ugly is beautiful thing. We'll look at a collection that's verging on the ugly and we'll give it so much praise because of it. And then there isn't any element of that at all, is there? There's no clash of ugly in this to make it work.
But also I think it's worth remembering it is very retro, but those women that he's referencing, that he obviously admires, are fabulous and were fabulous looking. They look better than anyone almost. I mean, I've got Marilyn Monroe, in terms of iconography, rock iconography, pop, women just, look at Jane Birkin or Anita or those people from that time, they look amazing. So he's got that right. You look at those girls, we're analysing it.
But isn't good fashion new?
I don't think. I mean, loads of people wouldn't. I don't think of Anita Pallenberg or Jane Birkin as like an ideal of
a lot of people do.
Female beauty.
A lot of women do.
I know they. I was listening to.
No, Jane Birkin. That's very true.
I was listening
Maybe Anita's not as obvious, but sorry.
I was listening to Boris Johnson's audiobook about London, and I was shopping in Tesco last night, and.
You paint quite the picture there, do you?
He obviously, I was buying dessert actually, I bought a lot of dessert, and he went on for ages about the Stones, but mostly about Anita Pallenberg and all this, the others, and then kind of being naked under a fur coat with taking acid and half-eaten Mars bars and all that sort of thing, and fucking in the back seats of cars, and he clearly did, but I mean, loads of people didn't. That was a long time ago.
So you're saying that this is harking back to a kind of beauty that's not relevant?
Do you think the references
are these girls
too
hot
old,
to you?
Dean? To you?
No, not at all. I don't.
It's not an old reference. You think
well,
people
no,
are
I mean,
referencing things which are too old.
Poor Dean. Answer
I
was going to help you out here.
I don't think the references are too old, but I don't think like it's an obvious ideal beauty. I don't think everyone's like, oh, that.
I agree
that's
with
the
Bailey. To women,
sexiest,
Jane
greatest
Birkin
time.
is like.
Yeah, I think it is.
Those
well,
girls.
also it's Kate. It's
Kate Moss, isn't it? Sienna Miller when she was cool.
It's hot chick. It's hot rock chick.
But those women were in the public eye for 7, 8, 10, 14, 15 years. Arguably, some of them are still in the public eye. So there's a whole catalogue of imagery documented in books, not just on the internet. Whereas the icons of today, the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, especially with the onslaught of internet technology, they only get a few minutes in the limelight. So those iconic characters really can't build as they have
That's interesting,
over the time. And again, it's a comment on culture, communication, how we now communicate and how we see things. Because to me, although I agree with you and Jane Birkin and Pallenberg and all those iconic women, although I wasn't around when they were at their height, you understand that they've had the time to develop as icons. Whereas today, it's a lot harder. I mean, I couldn't name an icon in the last 5 years that has the fame of those
Yeah,
3 or 4 women.
there isn't an enduring.
But if you look at them,
different.
there are
It's
icons, but there are
different.
different kind of beauty. Beyonce, Rihanna.
Kendall Jenner.
So music, more music.
Kendall Jenner. Good point.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
obviously
cocktails.
they won't last.
But that's a very
People
different
won't be
kind of
talking
beauty.
about them.
I don't think people talk about Beyonce forever.
I hope not.
I don't think in that same way. I don't think that in a kind of icon like Jane Birkin or Charlotte Rampling, I don't think in that same...
Why were they so iconic then? What do you think?
Because they don't have someone like Beyonce has that kind of very commercial aspect, and she's been kind of styled and moulded along the way. They had a kind of...
It was their style.
It was their style. It was a kind of integrity to them that I think stars like Beyonce
And it was
can't really
laid
tap
back.
into.
Whereas Beyonce, it's kind of amazing, it's front,
High
it's-
octane.
Yeah, high octane, it's performance, it's, and Pallenberg and Jane Birkin, it was like a pair of high-waisted jeans and a, white tank. And they look fabulous because, they were sitting on a wall in the south of France, so it was sort of also very much about an attitude that was laid back.
Do we think this captures that attitude though, or does it feel a little bit like an homage, but it won't have that authenticity?
I think it captures the fact that you can buy into that attitude, definitely. If that we always talk about that kind of it quality or it factor that someone like Jane Birkin or Charlotte Rampling, they have that, but how do you capture that? For the person that has the funds or has the means to, but they don't quite know how to do it, it's like, this is how you do it.
But do you think
You
those
buy
women that
into it.
shop the collection at Selfridges and they don't know about Yves Saint Laurent, they like Saint Laurent, do you think they know about Jane Birkin?
No.
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 You think they just like
I don't
it?
think so. No, they just see, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I should say for business, is that they come in, they see a product they like, they have the means, they have their husband's means or whatever, I'm going to throw blanket statements out there, but I see it all the time, day in, day out. And they buy it because they like it and they think they look young and cool in it. That's really it, isn't it? That's what most fashion brands want
I wonder if there are people who are
to...
buying Saint Laurent because of the ideology, because they're buying it because they really want to buy into that. I wonder what percentage of their shoppers are like, I want it because it's Saint Laurent, in the way that there are people that I do think, as we were kind of touching on before, like they buy Prada because they want that aesthetic of intelligent fashion, they want to kind of associate themselves with Miuccia Prada. I wonder if there are people who are real.
Sure.
No.
I know some in fashion.
I
but
know
wonder
I'm going to say
outside
the
of
worst
fashion.
thing, so this is no reflection of myself when I say this, but it's only because I hear the client perspective all the time. People will look at one of these sparkly dresses and they'll say, oh, that's fantastic, I can wear that to Nobu. That is really the reality of it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's like, let's not idealise it too much to put it right up here in terms of artistic integrity. It's like, these women, they, want to go out to Chiconi's in it, or there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what it is.
Yeah, it's not hanging out backstage.
No.
Right.
No.
No.
Right. Or maybe it is, I'm sure.
we have some
But then
questions from the
you've got the
youngsters?
kills.
Do you guys have any questions? What do you think of it? You can't
Younger
really see it, can you?
What do we have back? Off camera, there are some...
You're mean, you put them on the spot.
No, I think it's important. Off camera, there are some people that are watching this that are you from St Martin's, guys? What are you all doing fashion?
They do MA fashion, the journalism pathway.
So you're all 21, 22? No? Younger?
You're early 20s. Do you
Old,
find
yeah.
Saint Laurent exciting? Do you want to buy into it?
Well, I'm not in my early 20s, but when I was, yeah, I used to be. But the thing about Saint Laurent is that's the stuff I would find in charity shops, but the fabric just isn't as nice. That's the way I would see it.
But would it make you want to go and buy it? So she's just, you're not mic'd up, so you said it's the kind of stuff you could find in a charity shop. It's the kind of thing, which is an interesting point, it's the kind of thing where you could replicate the look quite easily. But would that make you then want to go and buy one of the original pieces?
No.
No. How about the rest of you?
I like the look, but I see it as an inspiration, because it's so easily replicated in kind of like a thrifty kind of manner.
Yeah.
I want to like a piece, I see it as a key inspiration to kind of use my own.
So it's about replicating it, which I guess is interesting because that does go back to our point about whether people want to buy into the look.
And
which I guess
actually,
they do.
Anita Pallenberg, who's a friend of mine, I remember her once saying to me, if I ever spend more than 100 quid on something, then I've gone mad. Because that was her philosophy, was you went and you found it, and it might take 6 months, but you find that shirt. And that's so it was all about sort of independent You know, I mean, I'm not talking about this look. I'm talking about something that maybe a old army jacket. I mean, whatever it is. But I think that's really interesting, really true. That actually, I think that's the bottom line: is that it's a great look, and you can do it your way.
Do it your way. So are we impressed by this? Do you like it?
Well, no, I was going to say they weren't mic'd up.
No, that's why I was repeating it.
Yeah, well, the comment that was interesting was that you do find it inspirational. Use it as reference, but you would go and find the look somewhere else. So from a historical context, from design, from a historical point of view, that is all that anyone, if they have a legacy, can hope to do, is to provide some kind of context for you to understand or to be inspired. That's the general idea.
It's not his context, is it? That's
well, it is his because he's the head of the house.
But I completely disagree with that, because that's not what they're thinking. They're not thinking about legacy and inspiration. He's thinking about the here and now, the sales, who's buying this, who's going to support our brand to help it grow to the next level. They're not thinking about, we want to inspire 20-somethings to replicate this and buy it elsewhere.
Do you not think,
they want people to buy it.
To stick up with me, I do think there's an element of authenticity to, like, if you go to the show, there's a whole section of the front row that is filled with kids from these obscure bands.
But do you know, they will capitalise. Like, if answer this as honestly as you can, if you wanted to buy into this, would you buy the accessories? If you couldn't do the £3,000 coat, would you do the £200, £300 shoes to buy into Saint Laurent? If you were that inspired, or the bags? None of it at all. Well, they're not selling to anyone in the 20s then, are they?
Yeah, I guess that's quite a good point.
But typically speaking, that's what the aim of the brand, that's what would happen.
Yeah.
No, but regardless of the commercial, you keep talking about the commercial. I'm not talking about the commercial.
Those awful parents that get divorced and use their children to like back them up.
We should parade them in front of the camera.
Do you agree with us, or do you agree with me?
We should parade them in front of the camera.
It's
It's got nothing to do with. You're talking about commerce as well, Jack. I wasn't making a comment about commerce at all. I'm talking about a creative person providing some kind of inspiration for the future of design, and they are over there. They need reference, and they need to understand where things come from, or for the good or the bad. If Heidi's pulling things from the past and presenting them as new now, then that's actually quite an interesting artistic comment in itself about culture and how we see things.
What's the comment?
My friend, I had a designer friend said...
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, it's a comment on culture, isn't it? And how we behave. Because, I mean, I was having a conversation with some people in my studio, and every single reference is pulled from the internet now. It's not, you don't go to books. A lot of people don't usually go to books now, because everything is widely available from the internet. And again, you haven't earned that information for yourself because it's so quick. You can just grab it from here and grab it from there. Now, I'm not saying that's a positive or a negative. I'm just saying that's the way that culture has developed. So it's a cultural phenomenon, unfortunately. Do I like the collection? I think he's done better ones.
Dean, what were you going to say?
Just my friend said to me earlier today that, but he's a critic, obviously, of Hedi, but he said this sort of thing can only be relevant if it's impossible to do anything new. If like everything's been done and there's no way you can come up with new ideas, that's the only way this kind of nostalgic attitude to design can be relevant.
No, I think that's an interesting point. It's strange to see this in a fashion week where, to talk about Paris and to contextualise it, there are designers who've done stuff that feels incredibly exciting and incredibly refreshing and quite jarring in the eye in the way that great fashion is when you first see it and you don't quite know if you like it. And I guess that's why my issue is with it, because do I want to buy it? Yeah, probably, and I think it would look great and I really like it when I see it in the store. But it doesn't... Lou in her shopper hat likes it, but Lou in her fashion hat, I look at it next to what we saw from Gareth Pugh, or what we saw, as Bay was saying, what we saw from Prada or from Marni, houses that I love, or Yoji, exactly. And you look at it and you think,
you want more.
Yeah,
it's commercial though. Is everyone agreed that it's commercial?
Yeah, and it's a hell of a lot more desirable than most fashion shows.
If that's what it's making you think, then it's doing exactly what it says on the tin. Because if your fashion head's saying no, but your commercial head's saying yeah, then it's he's doing exactly what he set out to do. Yeah. And where I disagree with Carlo is in the fact that we have to remember that Hedi, he's on a salary. He's paid by that brand to make it perform. He's not thinking of leaving a legacy, leaving behind, you know, this, that, and the other. He's of the here and now, the sales. He will sit in meetings and he will hear about the sales and what styles and categories have performed the best. That's why they axed Stefano. That's why they got him in. He's on a salary. He's paid to produce a collection that sells, and
I
he's
think
clearly
he does
doing the
want
right
a
thing.
legacy, though.
Yeah, I kind of
It's
think
very
does.
obvious he wants a legacy.
You know, but I think
Otherwise, he'd just do fashion design. He incorporates every single element of popular culture.
But do you not think that's a strangle at having a legacy? So he's like, okay, I get that I've got to do clothes that are super commercial. Fine,
No,
but
because
I'll
he's
do
also
a
a
cool
very good businessman.
set.
You can be a great designer, you can be a visionary, but you can also be a fantastic businessman too. The gum print on the dress, by the way, is an reference for an Andy Warhol, and Andy Warhol said, "The best kind of art is good business." Think about that.
That's a good note to end on. Ponder that, children. Thank you very much, everyone. That was a great discussion.